Hey guys, we're live. I got a fantastic guest for today's show. He served with the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. And if you ever wanted to know about it, I mean, they were these mythical soldiers in the U.S. Army. And it's just great that Gavin's agreed to come on with us. And without further ado,
Hi, everyone. Great to be here, MSG. Thank you for having the platform. Looking forward to sharing some of my experience from the old guard and, talking to everyone, giving some knowledge out there.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because I've just got like tons of questions. Well, we're going to do a Q&A toward the end. I'll bring the chat up on the side. You guys could post your questions. And before we get started, let's do a plug for your channel. Your YouTube channel is
Senior specialist. No
Senior
spaces.
Specialist. So, and I got in contact with Gavin because of your video on Jeremy.
Good old Jeremy.
Yeah, the Jeremy DeWitt rabbit hole. He did a beautiful job with covering Jeremy DeWitt, and that's how I got in contact with him. And then I found out he was from the Old Guard, and I just he had a lot of things going on, family stuff, and it got postponed. But now that things have settled down a little bit, we managed to get him on here. So, when did you join the Army?
So I joined the Army 2013. Spent about a year in the DEPIN program. If there's any people are familiar with the Challenge Academies, I actually did one of those in 2010 for 6 months. So from there, it's just killing time, getting high school done, getting some college units until I get in the Army. Like 2013 is when I enlisted.
Nice. And you enlisted for infantry?
Infantry. Infantry all the way. I want that airborne contract. But didn't quite work out that way, but
yeah, I was going to say you didn't go airborne though, did you? No.
I was very naive. I understand that if it's not your so recruiter. If you go infantry, they're gonna make you go airborne. I was like, okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you were right there, home of the airborne, Fort Benning. Well, what do they call it now?
That's Fort.
It's getting
Fort Moore, I think.
It's getting changed back.
I saw that.
Just like they do with Bragg, because Bragg would always be Fort Bragg to me, and yeah, it's. I'm glad to see that the wokeness is being reversed.
There's things that don't need to be changed, or we have bigger fish to fry too. Like,
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, so you enlisted and got your contract for infantry, and headed off to lovely Fort Benning, Georgia.
Sure. So I'll go through the scenario. What led me to the Old Guard. So in 30th AG, you're doing endless paper. For anyone that's been down there, there's hundreds and hundreds of people going through the process before you get shipped off to your actual platoon. And then one night, it's probably the third day, they have everyone in this giant room. And this E7 walks in with an honor guard patch. Never seen it before. I'm like, that's kind of cool looking. He gets up on stage and says, all right, if you have 110 GT score on the ASVAB, get out, which is a general aptitude test. So good chunk of the room goes out, and he goes, all right, airborne contracts, option 40s, which is a ranger contract, or any 18 X-rays, people going special forces, kick rocks. So 100 people leave, like 50 left in the room. And he starts going over his brief. Let me tell you about the Old Guard. And he gave a okay summarization, what to expect, what the unit did. But, he's a recruiter at the same time. So he did share some things that weren't as accurate as they should have been. One of the things he said is, if you're in the Old Guard, you're going to be in front of a bunch of dignitaries. So your uniform has to look sharp. So if you want any type of special school, just say the word, you'll go. And I was a little...
We're getting a little... We're getting a little break up on the audio and video here.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's, I mean, you're in California, I'm in Massachusetts, and who knows where StreamYard servers are.
Yeah. Is it cleared up?
Yeah.
All right, good. So the three selling points that E7 told everyone was number one, any school you want, you get if you go the old guard, which, as we know, that's not how the Army works. You're not going to have E2 infantry guys going to Halo school, but that's one of the selling points. Other choose to, you can deploy with one unit. That's strange. You get to pick your own unit to deploy. Okay, that's a cool thing. And the third thing he said, Fort Myer, which is a part of Arlington National Cemetery, where the Old Guard station is next to Georgetown. So you're going to live that college life while doing all these cool things. Those are his three big selling points. But, I had a Vietnam vet before I enlisted tell me if the Army ever offers you something, take it, and it'll all work out. It'll be for the best. And it is an experience I could have never expected, and I'm eternally grateful to go the Old Guard. The things you experience there, and just the discipline it instills, it's something else.
How many out of that 50 got selected to go? So I'm assuming this is before basic and AIT, or so they got you fresh. You didn't know anything.
I didn't know anything at all. I think 25 of the 50-ish or so actually signed up, but there are some other requirements also. At that time, I believe you couldn't be shorter than 5-10 to go. So some people are like, oh, well, you need to sign up, and then that didn't work out. And, just other things that has happened through basic training took out some other people. But I'd say probably 10 of that group actually ended up at the Old Guard around there.
And you were one of the 10?
One of the 10.
How about physical standards? Well, you still have to go through basic training and your infantry training.
And there's no additional physical standard, just the basic 60-60-60 on the APFT. For officers, I believe it's 80s across the board, and NCOs at 70s. But for junior listed, there was no additional physical requirement. But when you get to the actual unit, they assign you based off of your physique. So I was really skinny, so they sent me to an escort platoon. We had some guy that's really stocky. He went to a caskets platoon, and someone that was just on the shorter side, so he went to the firing party. Those are the three basic platoons in a Old Guard company.
Okay, so the whole thing that I've always heard, you have to have a 32-inch waist. Hey, I'm just telling you what people hear out in the field.
Yeah. So they do have those specialty platoons that are more rigorous as far as, we'll say, more of the cosmetic features for you. But at a baseline, you don't get started at specialty platoon. So you go through something called rope when you get to the Old Guard, which it's supposed to be 3 weeks, but just depending on what's going on in the unit, it could be longer. I was actually for like 2 months, which wasn't too much fun, but they teach you how to march, basic uniform stuff at the regiment level. But when you get to your unit, it's completely different. So you relearn all that stuff. But you go through that 3 weeks training. After that, you get assigned to the different battalions. There's 1st Battalion and 4th Battalion Old Guard. So the shorter guys will go 1st Battalion, which is the daily funeral stuff in the cemetery. And the taller guys will go to 4th Battalion, which is the company I was initially an Honor Guard company. And then also to 9th MP Corps, Sink Guard, which is the one that wear the colonial uniforms. Then the process from there is much less formal. There's 3 people from my group in the ROPE, which is Regimental Orientation Program, that went to Honor Guard company. I was a tall, skinny one. So first I was like, all right, skinny guy, you're going to escort. We like skinny guys there. Then the stocky guy, all right, you're strong. You can lift caskets platoon. And then the last guy's, all right, well, you're going to a firing party. But
yeah, I just brought up there. Let me see. I got to change this to. No, that's not good. This is better. All right. So and you said you've never been on their webpage, but their webpage, if you look up 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, it comes right up. And yeah, it pretty much outlines everything. First Battalion, Fourth Battalion, caisson detachment, and then it's got some other information as well. And you were in Fourth Battalion, so we'll
Fourth
click on
Battalion.
Fourth Battalion, and it's got a little read more thing here, and it goes over the key tasks: secure the tomb of the unknown soldier, um, goodwill ambassadors, rifle routines, major military and civic functions, administrative support to enable battalion level, blah, 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 a bunch of bullshit. And now we can hear from you. Um, what was
Yeah.
really going on with all of it?
So right before we jump in the call, I wish I did more research on this, but there's actually a third battalion that's technically a part of the Old Guard, and it's in Fort Lewis. I don't know, I can't really remember the history behind that, but for some reason it got moved to Fort Lewis, as they don't do any of the ceremonial stuff, but from what I recall, it's a strike battalion, but technically it falls under there. But obviously, 1st Battalion, 4th Battalion, the ceremonial ones. So 1st Battalion is they do the bulk of the cemeteries in Arlington National Cemetery. They have, I believe it's 3 companies. You have Charlie Company, Bravo Company, Hotel Company, I want to say Delta. So 4 companies. And they're the ones doing the day in, day out on the cemetery, actually conducting full honor funerals in Arlington. Now, 4th Battalion is a little different. So first they have the 289th MP Corps, which is a very unique MP Corps because they do so much work in the National Capital Region, work with Secret Service. They have a special CERT team there that provides support to the White House, and they do a lot of stuff in Calanco that is a little more hush hush that I don't know too much about, but they're spread out pretty wide throughout the region. Then you have the Sync Guard, which is Alpha Company. They're the ones that dress in the traditional, you actually can see behind me. You got the original revolutionary coats, and they're the Commander-in-Chief's Guard is what that stands for. Then Honor Guard Company, which is the company I was initially part of, they're the ones that do the senior general officer retirements, general officers, DAs, and they're the ones that actually get to march at the White House when there's escorts for foreign dignitaries. And they're the escort platoons that actually have the opportunity to get to march at the tomb when we have dignitaries come there. And from a ceremonial standpoint, that's the basics. And we also have some other support companies that are like the 529th. But from a ceremonial standpoint, that's the breakdown. Then you have the headquarters company that actually has the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the United States Drill Team. The Continental Color Guard is actually a part of Honor Guard as a separate platoon. And then Caisson, when I was there, was actually a part of 1st Battalion. And then the firing battery is also part of 1st Battalion. But those are the specialty platoons that you have to try out for.
So what, I don't know how to ask this. All right, let me retread a little bit. So everybody always asks about the weapons. Do you qualify with the weapons? The actual,
The
you don't
M14s,
qualify
no.
with the M14s.
No.
There's just lots of myths and things like that, because you still do all your basic military stuff. Your qualifications and all of that stuff, PT tests, and all the other lovely things that go along with that. Your all the stupidness of the Army, um, on top of everything else you have to do. Um, Spit and polish. I had a couple of people say, "Oh, make sure you ask them about all the leather. Is it leather or is it patent leather?"
So when I was there, the general platoons used the patent leather, but the last 2 people that still use the full leather that you do the spin polish, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is a different breed. They're a level all on their own. And then also, I believe the drill team still did the shining on their actual,
Spit polish.
where they hold
Yeah.
the bayonets. Yeah.
I can't even imagine having to spit shine all that leather. Did
So they actually take 10 hours to shine their shoes initially. They have a very special, unique process for the tomb that they use lighter fluid to strip it and then go through polish it. But again, they're a whole
I
different
can
level.
imagine. I can imagine. So, what was your job? It's well, once you get through what did you call it? Rope. Once you get
Rope.
through that, um, give us a typical day.
So the old guard fluctuates a lot with how the army is being funded. And what I mean by that is, if the service is being a lot more people retiring, there's a lot more ceremonies. So in 2013, when I got there, we had generals retiring almost every 3 days. So that'd be two senior general officer retirements. And the tempo for the old guard is every mission usually has two rehearsals. So your average day would be in an escort platoon is you come in, do your PT at 6 o'clock in the morning, takes an hour, hour and a half or so, and then get your uniform prepared, eat, shower, do hygiene, come to unit 09 rehearsal for whatever the ceremony or whatever the actual ceremony is that day. Conduct that until 12ish. Go lunch hour, hour and a half, and usually you might have to do some other type of rehearsal depending what the ceremony is. If it's more a high visibility thing, so something that's going to be on TV, or if there's a foreign dignitary, run through another rehearsal. The units that will actually be a part of it, or maybe do some infantry tactic training like glass houses, some type of BMT class, the basic stuff, or do PT. But my first, I'd say 6 months, there's this SGO, senior general officer, then a GO general officer on Monday, then one Tuesday, then a DA retirement, which is Department of the Army, when, it's a big group of people retiring after their 20 plus years, and just ceremony over ceremony. And the time that it takes to get your unit for those things is hours and hours. So, I'd say 6 hours of actual ceremonies and a couple hours of uniform maintenance, and then squeeze in some infantry stuff if there's time at the end of the day.
So
That's for my battalion.
yeah, your typical day was probably 10 or 12 hours.
That first year, yeah,
Wow.
a 10-hour day was usually a good day.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how was the facilities? I assume you were living in the barracks.
So there's a lot of the buildings on that base are actually owned by the Smithsonian, so they can't really be torn down or refurbished. Or that was the explanation we were given. So your rope barracks, the initial one, was terrible. Calling a spade, black mold, three people
Ugh.
to room, some guy sleeping on a cot for a couple weeks. But after that, the unit I went to, Honor Guard Company, they had the new barracks allocated to them, and I could not complain about that at all. It was, I assume, very very nice facilities. Each person had their own bedroom, then you'd share with one other person for the shower and kitchen. But aside from the water not always heating up, which being a SoCal boy living in Virginia for that first winter, I didn't think I was going to make it with no hot water or heating. But as far as quality standards, it wasn't bad. And then because Fort Myer also has a lot of other big army stuff on it, so there's only so much room. My last year as an E4, I was actually able to apply for BAH and live off base in DC. And so if you're doing good, doing what you're supposed to, that's usually something on your third year you can apply for to live off base, just because there's not that much room.
Yeah,
So facilities start really bad, then they got pretty good.
I can imagine what the BAH is for that area.
It is a pretty penny.
Oh, I'm sure. Um, yeah, yeah, I can't even imagine. It had to be probably double or triple what your base pay was.
I don't want to say the wrong number, but I remember. So a buddy and myself, we actually got an apartment together just to split the rent and then pocket the rest of the BAH. And after rent, I remember it added like another $1,500 that we could keep afterwards, just because it made more sense, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's cha-ching. Cash in while you can.
And
Um, yeah. So that's because I never realized that everything was just crunched right in there on Arlington. I didn't realize that was all part of the post. Um,
it's interesting. You see the sergeant major of the army running around you for PT in the morning. It's interesting.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Um, how many guys were in your unit? Not uh, not classified. There, everybody knows.
Yeah, I want to say so. A platoon. I mean, a company. We'll start a company has 3 platoons, so it's about give or take 70 to 90 people. Each battalion has about five, so 1,000 support companies. I'd say around 1,500 people total in the old guard when I was there.
Man, that's a lot of people.
It's bigger than you think it actually is. You know,
Yeah,
I was
that's
mystified seeing that patch the first time, but then after a week walking on the base, I'm like, okay, like, it's not that rare here.
yeah, it's not that rare there, but like I said, the rest of the army, you guys are those mystical people that do all of that stuff. Um, did you get in it? Did you move to any specialty units or?
So my first year, I stayed in honor guard company, the presidential escort platoon, which some say it's a specialty platoon, some say it's not. It's technically not. And then from there, I went to a S3 op shop. So I initially wanted to try out for Caisson when I was transitioning out of honor guard, but one of the requirements was you need a driver's license. At the time, I didn't. So as my platoon sergeant said, well, it looks like your choice is being made for you where you're going. But those specialty platoons are no joke. So I had a couple of buddies in the Continental Color Guard, which are the ones that you see at the Super Bowl holding the
Yep.
American flag, the Army flag. They don't do this anymore because obviously hazing is something they're trying to do away with, even if it's something traditional for a unit. But for example, the Continental Color Guard, their training cycle, one of their final tests was they're going to smoke you on this place called Cardiac Hill, which it's not that big of a hill, but do the bear crawl, burpees up and down. And then they make you run to the National Cathedral, which is like a 10-mile run, smoke you the whole way there, whole way back. And then what they'd make them do is they put them in a room, fill the room with steamers, turn the steamers on in their wool uniforms. So their uniforms are actually made of wool. They're not polyester because you need to be able to press them. It makes them look sharper, but they're a lot hotter in the humidity. So then they'll make them stand there at attention for 3 hours in a room with like 120% humidity that's 110 degrees. And you cannot move for that because they need to make sure you're not going to drop the national flag at a ceremony. So they need to make sure you have that heart. So that's Continental Color Guards tryout. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, there's things that that
Oh,
probably sorry for. I can probably not make it
well,
through that or
you
the
kind
Tomb
of
of
you
the
broke
Soldier.
up just a little bit there. You were going to talk about
Sorry.
Tomb of the Unknown, but you're still kind of frozen up.
Let me know when it comes back. Any better?
It's starting to clear up.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still kind of frozen in time. All right. He's going to jump out and come back in. Man, this is fascinating. And I promise we're going to get to a Q&A because I'm sure some people have got some questions. Um, yeah, BAH pay. That's going to be no joke in that area. Because I was getting, I don't even remember. I thought I was making big money when I was getting like 1,800 a month BAH. But I retired in 2011, and that was on Connecticut area. Uh, I can only imagine what the DC area is for BAH. While he's He hasn't reconnected just yet, but let's take a look over here. Um, so he went to the S3 shop, and they've got links like Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And it talks about what they do. There's a picture of them. Pretty crazy. He's back in. All right, let's get him back up here. There we go.
There we go.
I was just showing some shit here.
And my apologies to the audience. I just moved and it looks like Spectrum is not going to be the best bet for my internet here. All right.
All right. So you were getting ready to talk about the Tomb of the Unknown.
So
those guys.
The tomb for us is probably the rumors that you heard in Big Army. You hear the things like they're not allowed to cuss, they're not allowed to ever drink alcohol again in their life, but obviously those things aren't true, but their regiment to become a sentinel is unbelievable. There's a reason. It's the lowest awarded badge aside from the astronaut badge in the military. So when I was there, they had a 24-hour training cycle, which means you work for 24 hours, you're off for 24 hours, on, off, 24 hours. And what that encompasses the knowledge you have to memorize in that position, which I don't want to share too much because, you know, that's their stuff, but it's stuff that it's not easy to learn. It's not like standard field guides, things of that nature. It's really specific, really historic, and really personable stuff to the tomb. But the hours those guys put in to meet that standard is just unbelievable. On average, I knew a lot of people in the tomb. They say their uniforms take, you know, first go around 20 hours to do to get one prepared just to march on the plaza. And they are their biggest critics. The sense of pride that those individuals have in their duty to defend the tomb and honor it, it's unparalleled. So to be a sentinel, it takes something else. And it's actually the only badge in the military that can be revoked if you earn it. So if you're a sentinel, you earn that right. And you say, you know, have a domestic abuse case or get a DUI, they have the right to revoke your badge and essentially strip you from being a sentinel, because that's something they take very seriously as far as how they carry themselves and, you know, that professionalism they display on the tomb. But they're really something else. So those rumors you hear in the Big Army usually, I think, are applied to the tomb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's who everybody sees.
Yeah.
You know, you that or the drill team.
The drill team.
Those guys.
The drill team too.
I can only imagine. You know, you almost never see a screw up. Every now and then you do, and it's like nothing happened. They just stand there. It's like, wow. There's no scrambling or anything, you know. It's
in the whole old guard, you really don't want to make a mistake because you know you're representing the military and your country often to the world. And when you make a mistake, it feels terrible. That's why the hours go in there, but especially for people like the drill team. Again, different breed. One of my best friends, he's actually my E7, and you know, we're really close. He actually moved out to California and we went to USC together. He was in the drill team. He was also part of the 289th CERT team, which is that SWAT team for the National Capital Region. I really am trying to convince him to make a YouTube channel and maybe connect you guys to have a conversation. But his career was phenomenal. He made 7 and under 7. But again, it just speaks that mentality of a go-getter and, you know, just the most amazing mentor you can imagine. But they really try to procure that in these units. People, they're there for the right reason and not there just for the glam.
Yeah. Yeah. 7 and 7. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That is amazing. I think I made 6 and 7.
that's
Yeah.
still really good too. That
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, for big army, with the points and everything,
yeah,
the way things were. And yeah, that's amazing. Amazing. The let's see what if anybody's got any questions. What's some of the memorable things that you did? Some of the so you did presidential honor guard kind of stuff.
so, having the chance to be around the president obviously is an immense honor, and shaking your boots a little bit. But the thing that I can still clearly remember this day that just left such an impression on me is having the opportunity to be on the actual plaza. So one time it was for a full honors ceremony. I can't remember who the dignitary was, but this will be a little funny story to share with everyone. When you do joint service present arms, the way you used to do is underneath your sight port on the M14, you have a knife hand under there. So you're just holding the rifle with your left hand. Now you have those gloves that are a little slick. And when it's snowing out, it's a little chilly. And I can't remember, I really wish I remember what that country was, but there's a country where their national anthem is like 8 minutes long. And so you've already been staying there for, a good plus 2+ hours, preparing for the ceremony and marching out, and you're not moving. So you're freezing up. And I'm a newer guy, and no one told me that you raise the sight post on the back so your thumb could clip it a little bit and gives you a little more leverage to hold it. But mine's pushing all the way, of course, so it's just all my strength holding that M14 like that. And I just see my bayonet start going down because I just can't feel my hand. It's just that cold. Oh my God, I cannot drop my rifle on the tomb. That's so is everything I got. Oh, and they record all your ceremonies when you're doing levels so they can review it later. And they see someone mess up, it's addressed then. And so when we went to lower our present arms, I thought, but that was noticed. But so the tomb, marching at the tomb it's an honor. My sergeant major said the best. Walking on the tomb is like going to the moon. Only so many people get that opportunity to say they've done it and experience it. And so once a year that they actually let the sentinels go home for leave, but they have to have people in the unit apply to be a tomb guard for a night so you can actually march on the plaza through the night while the sentinels get to spend time with their families. So I was able to apply and be selected for that. I just remember you can feel the energy on the plaza, and it's so dead silent overlooking the national capital. And just that feeling of the tradition, what it means to be a soldier, that really stuck with me. But that is the most memorable thing that I did while I was in the old guard.
That's so you actually got to stand at the tomb.
Yeah,
That has to be something that's going to be with you forever. I mean,
you feel it.
that's the honor of doing that. I can't even imagine what that was like. I mean, I can remember when we do like division review at Fort Bragg, and we'd be standing out there for 2.5, 3 hours with bayonets, and guys would be dropping, and there'd be freaking blood everywhere because they'd whack somebody on the way down with the bayonet. Um, so I can only imagine what it must be like for standing there, especially those white, what are they, polyester gloves?
Yeah, the polyester gloves.
Yeah. And I'm sure those rifles are well worn. Um,
Not
it's
to
not
kill
like
the
you can
mystique. They're pretty rusty inside. They don't shoot, but
really.
so strip them down for actual performance stocks and everything. But you also have to figure the people were around with those rifles just to be around these dignitaries with your bayonet. again, not going too deep into it, but the security you have to go through is something else. So, adding that level of bureaucracy, I think, is a little intended, just because side of that. Actually, MSG, I just finished cleaning out my store to show you. We have a ceremonial shoe here. They weigh about 5 pounds. You can see the horseshoe made of steel there. And there's another piece of steel here. And you have the clicker on the inside, which you can see the edge dressings coming off of. But we all have that, so when we're marching, you hear that unison click, click, click whenever you phase. Now, the other thing is Arlington has snow in it, so there's ice. So when you're marching around with this steel and you're going up and down hills, you're just praying to God you're not going to lose your footing. And every fiber in your being is tense, just because you don't want to be the guy that slips down the hill during a ceremony.
Yeah, I have a hard time with freaking cleats on my boots. Being up here in Massachusetts, it's and this year we had a shitload of ice, so
Yeah.
That's not good. So uniform allowance.
I do have a funny story about that. I forgot to share that as one of the Old Guard recruiter in Fort Benning's points that you get additional duty pay for being at the Old Guard. So you hear that, of course, you're like, oh, that sounds like a good deal, right? So I got to my unit, I saw that extra couple $100 hit my bank account. And in my head, I was like, oh, that must be my extra duty pay. Well, it was my uniform allowance for the year. So, of course, me being a dumb E1 Joe in DC blew that weekend. And so the next month, the pay cycle, I asked my NCO, hey, sorry, I need to get my special duty pay this month. Like, could I go talk to S1 or something? And of course, it chews me out. It goes, that's your uniform pay. Well, enjoy paying for that for the rest of the year. But there's no special uniform pay there, believe it or not. Yeah. I'm sorry. In the regular units, in the specialty platoons, you do get it because their uniforms are actually a little different than ours and have some other bells and whistles that they have to acquire. But it's not something where it's like an open allowance like BAS or BAH. It's something that, you use your like P card and purchase and it's reimbursed.
So it's just basically because everybody gets a clothing allowance every year. So it's just basically your clothing allowance.
Yeah, they issue additional stuff when you get there. Again, our uniforms are made of wool just so you can press them and it looks a lot sharper. So you don't wear any of your issued stuff. And then you have to turn most of it back in when you leave, obviously. But most of the stuff you need is issued. Now, in our guard company, we did our stuff a little bit differently. So we'd have to buy a little accessories, like special straps that tie your socks to your underwear just so your sock doesn't ride down while you're marching, or these special suspenders so you don't get wrinkles when you're marching, things of that nature, but nothing, too expensive. I will say buying steamers was a little obnoxious every couple months because you have to steam your uniform. So picture a bunch of Joes going to Bed Bath and Beyond, buying edge dressing, steamers, and all like sewing yarn, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's I'm sure that the uniform upkeep, and I'm sure they just reissue.
They are very stingy about that actually, because the wool uniforms are really expensive. They tell us they're about $1,000 a jacket, which can't really verify or not, but that's what CIF says, right? So I remember you saying someone about the bayonets. When someone stabs you with a bayonet, that actually happens a little more frequently than you think. Right phase, and then someone does port arms and they go too far and they stab you in the back. That's the worst thing. You're not mad that you got stabbed. You're upset that now your uniform has to be started all over from scratch. And that's like a 30-hour process, like gutting it, pressing it. Everything's measured within 1/16 of an inch. So the time that you put in to get your uniform just at the basic level, you much rather take that poke than someone cut a hole in it and now you have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I can understand that train of thought. I really can. I can understand that You'd much rather take a stick than have your uniform get a hole in it. When you spend 30 hours getting your uniform just to the base level, um,
Yeah.
so you fit in with everybody else. And I never realized they were all wool uniforms. Um, it's really hard to tell when you see it. I just think, oh, they got some modified dress blues or something like that, and it's very far from the truth. It sounds like.
It helps in the wintertime, but in the summertime, with that humidity, that wool does not breathe. And for those longer missions, you feel it like a little sauna
Well, they
going
used
on.
to World War II. I was reading something somewhere. Their wool uniforms. They used to clean them with diesel fuel to get the bugs out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I
I
did not
didn't
know
either.
that.
I read it
Interesting.
on one of the history pages. I was just reading up on something winter uniforms and how they kept how they kept the wool clean, and there was a bit in there about they cleaned it with diesel. I was like, just to get the bugs out because they would get infested with bugs. And I'm thinking to myself
Wow.
that's so you figure they're out there for weeks at a time, no showers, no nothing, and they get bugs in their uniform. That would be just.
Yeah, it's something else.
Let's open it up for some questions. I'm going to bring the chat up, and we got 20 something people in here, so hopefully some people have got questions that. So Stone Vet, that's Josh. He's a fellow Stolen Valor guy. We
Okay.
collaborate on a lot of ding dongs that are out there. I think he's I can't remember. I think he's the one that brought Michael Kaiser, who's now in jail, awaiting trial on a
Right.
bunch of felonies. So hopefully we won't have to worry about any additional content with that shitbird. Um, and of course, Jeremy's in jail, and then he's going to go to prison. Do you guys still rip the lining out of the dress coat?
Yes, we do, but there's usually someone in the platoon that specializes in it because if you mess up, the uniform falls apart. So that like the pockets and the polyester stuff inside the wool will actually gut that out. It's called gutting uniform. And then that's how when you press it, you don't get those lines and it's easier to press. It makes it a lot sharper. So on the back you have your pleats. And the measurements for your pleats are really specific. If you can imagine the top of your uniform in the back, I believe it is 6 ticks, and then at the bottom it's 2 inches. But you have the seam that has to be completely flush with the uniform. And if you don't gut your uniform, it's so hard. It's borderline impossible. So we still do gut them, and then CIF yells at you for it, and then you turn it in.
Oh, come on, guys! You guys got to have some questions. I'm really surprised. Question about the NCOs that are with a sidearm. Uh, Empty mags, I'm assuming.
So I can't speak to the tune because I
Oh,
don't ever.
you're breaking up on me again.
Okay.
And
Better
you're back, kind of.
back now.
I don't know what's going on with the internet.
I think it might be on my end.
It's starting to clear up. I don't know if there's something a major storm or something in between us or what.
Is this any
Yeah,
better?
yeah, yeah. You're clear now.
Awesome. Okay. What is the correct way you learn to salute properly? From Graham. So the way saluting, oh, I think I lost you again. Am I back?
No, you're back.
Okay. So the way saluting was explained to me is if you show your palm, it's disrespectful. And then you put your ring finger on the tip of your eyebrow. So you have it right there, tip of your eyebrow, palm slightly tilted because you don't want to show that. That's the way I was taught to salute. But I think that question is because with our uniforms are sometimes too tight, so you see people salute like this because you can't bring your elbow up. What thing would I have done differently? The biggest thing I would have done differently in the Army and Old Guard in general would be number one, there's always time for school. So even though you make the excuses that you can't do college, take advantage of those CLEP tests because there is time. I would something else I would have done is spend more time being in the moment while I was in the Army and not looking at things as more of a job, but more as an opportunity to experience. Because when you're doing it, it's, your job, you go through the motions sometimes, but taking that second to understand what you're doing and why it's so important and that it's an opportunity, it's not a right. Having that perspective, I think I would have taken more advantage of. And then trying out for more specialty stuff. My platoon sergeant offered to send me to air assault school 6 months before I got out, and I didn't want to change my CIF date. So that's not a great answer, but that's the truth.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got. Did you have to shave your uniform?
Not as much as for your pants you do. It just you sweat more, I think, in the pants because you have that friction from your legs. Because the way you march in a straight line. And the way they teach you how to do that is they have you march on a curve for hours and hours, and you can't look down. So your feet are going like this instead of, traditional marching. So that friction inside your pants, you have to shave them every once in a while. But we don't shave our uniforms that much because we don't want to nick them and create a hole. So the way we actually do it, you take a can of Axe and a lighter and you burn the uniforms, just quickly burn it, and then you pat it off the fuzz. And that's how you keep the fuzz off it because you don't want to, again, cut a hole from actually shaving it.
That's one thing we did and I ruined a couple of berets doing it. We'd always shave our berets. And of course, you gut the inside out, and all you leave is the cardboard front. Yeah. And then you rip everything else out, and then you shave the hell out of it. And so I was already, when the Army went black beret Army wide, because I was already used to the beret. And then we had all the pizza guys running around wearing them when everybody got the black beret. Here's another one.
So I think the hill you're talking about is Cardiac Hill. If you piss your sergeant off, then yeah, it might be on Cardiac Hill, but usually they just have you run around post behind caisson.
Yeah, we are. I think most of my PT tests toward the end of my career, they were all on a running track.
We don't have a track on base just because it's so small. So, they'll have some guy go out and measure some random route. And there's a lot of high-ranking officers on that base. So usually your PT track changes based off of their mood sometimes. But you only have to run up and down the hill for the PT test if you upset someone. I didn't have to do that, thankfully.
And I'm going to expand on this even a little bit more in your unit as the Old Guard.
I mean, it's like anything else. If the standards are the same, then, if you do the job, then you should have the opportunity to do the job, same as everyone else. We didn't have that many females when I was in the Old Guard, and that's before they changed the rules for the infantry. So we did have some people. We had some amazing females that actually tried out for the specialty platoons and kicked ass and, held that line. So again, if you're doing the job to the standard of what the job is, that's my opinion.
Yeah, being in the military police, or even when I was in aviation, we were surrounded. There were lots of females, and I have no issue with it so long as they could do the job. Even when I was in Iraq, I had some stellar female NCOs, some E5s, E6s, same as I did with the males, and then I had some duds and some duds.
Yeah.
The ones you think are going to be a rock star turn into a shit bag, and the shit bags turn into rock stars when it comes time for the rubber to meet the road, so to speak.
Yep. We're all soldiers. We all have a job to do. So
Yeah,
if you're doing the
exactly.
job, that's all it is.
And so long as they can do the job, meet the standards, and they're not having to change the standards for somebody to get into that. I don't think you're ever going to see females in the infantry. I just don't think they're strong enough to keep with that standard. I don't see a 5'6" female carrying an 80-pound ruck as on what is it, 11 Charlie
Yeah, 11
mortar?
Charlie.
Yeah,
Motorman. Yep.
I just don't see that. I just don't
Yeah.
see that. I don't see a lot of dudes doing it.
That's what I would say. Most guys can't even do that. Like,
Yeah.
but those things are not fun. Like but
How about improvised improvised uniform adjustments? I think they were pretty well way beyond that, Woodrow. When they spend 30 hours just to get their uniform up to base, I don't think they're going to forget and leave their tie at the barracks.
yeah, and we always have someone called a supplemental guy, just in case someone passes out or something goes wrong with a uniform for every platoon in ceremony, so you can sub them in. I can't really think of an instance where I saw malfunction. You have little things that I don't think the public would really catch. I take that back. There was one time my ribbons rack, the damn it fell out while I was marching, and it just hung there for a second. But you're marching, you can't look, you can't do anything about it. I'll tell a funny story along those lines though, because you had to tell one funny shitbag story, right? So when you're doing the ceremonies, there's actually the internal grading, which you'll have someone will get selected from each platoon from each company that's participating in a ceremony, and you'll get a grade. So for honor guard, if you got under a 90, God help you. There's some help coming your way. We had a guy in our platoon that, had a problem not partying on weekdays. And so we're forming up. You're supposed to be at the company an hour before. No one could find him. So I was actually supposed to be the super that day, but they had me going in since we couldn't find that guy. He shows up probably 2 minutes before we're supposed to assign someone to get graded. And you could tell he was out drinking the night before. And his uniform just looks like ass. It just horrible. I don't know if they changed it after the fact he showed up, but the grader actually selected him. They said first squad, second man, and that was that guy. And our hearts just dropped. Like, oh God. He got an 82 on his uniform, which for the rest of the unit, it's not horrible, but Honor Guard had those streamers for decades of having the best marching standard, having the best uniform standard. And our platoon sergeant made that man do 100 burpees for every single deficiency the grader found. I don't know how he did it. He did burpees for, I don't even know how long it was. When I walked by the office, he was purple, just doing burpees all day long. But, we got his uniform squared away before he marched out. And what they teach us is if something goes wrong, you don't acknowledge it, you stick it. So, because if you move and adjust something, then you're going to catch everyone's attention because no one else is moving while you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a little long-winded, but
no, that's a good explanation too. Yeah. If something, goes to shit, you can movement gives it away.
Exactly.
And any little movement, I mean, I even think about that, like doing games and stuff online. Yep. If you're playing any shooter games, if you move, you're dead. It doesn't sound like they had a whole lot of off time to have any jobs.
I I want to say you weren't supposed to. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like I remember someone having a side job and getting in trouble. I can't remember what the regulation for that would be. Okay, no, it's coming back to me. We had some guys that were bouncers at a club in DC and roughed some civilian up, and it was a big problem. That's what it was. So I remember after that, if you were to have any other additional employment, it had to be approved by the battalion commander, which is usually a no. But so I think initially it's just like one of those don't ask, don't tell things, but that happened, and then it became a lot more formalized.
Yeah, I used to try and get some kind of extra work. Well, when I was stationed at Bragg, I'd get off work late in the afternoon. I'd go to the Yamaha shop and I'd build motorcycles for 4 or 5 hours at night. And
Nice.
I mean, he used to give me like 10 or $15 a bike to put them together. Um, it wasn't a lot of work, but it was something just to supplement.
And you enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. Everybody knows I'm a motorcycle nut, so season's coming.
Season's
6 weeks.
6 weeks. And you didn't really have time to. At least in my company, I couldn't imagine having another job. Like there are a lot of 84-hour weeks. Like even so, I remember my paycheck paying into the GI Bill my first year was $500 bi-weekly flat, so 1,000 a month. Like yeah, that sucks, and you burn through it, but like, you don't have the time to hold something else down. Maybe when get some rank on you, then it's possible. But initially, a Joe in a marching company, I don't think that's happening. Well, maybe nowadays because you do stuff online, but I didn't really know anyone back then doing that except for the odd security job.
Yeah, I mean, bouncers and then kind of rough somebody up. There were a lot of guys from different units at some of the strip clubs at Bragg that would work.
You
Probably
know,
not supposed to. Even it's some of them were probably off limits, but you know what they don't know.
that atmosphere being in DC too, because when you mess up, it's headline news. You're around all the embassies, all those Ivy League universities like Georgetown. We had a couple of guys. I'll tell you some stories offline that did some stuff they really weren't supposed to, and then
Yeah,
it turns into like no one's going off base, or you have to write an essay every Friday of exactly what you're doing at these times, and have your team leader check in with you just because you're under the magnifying glass. And I tell people the military is like the regular world. It's every type of walk of life you can imagine. So you're going to have those blue falcons, those people that slip through the cracks, but that's not the
you're gonna have
majority of the
that. You're gonna
organization.
have that guy.
That guy, exactly, that
We
guy.
know that guy. Some of us here know that guy.
That's right.
He goes by Generally Specific on YouTube, and
Generally specific.
he is the epitome of that guy.
I have to look at. I haven't seen that guy. I have to look that up. Generally specific.
There's a ton. There's a ton of stuff out there, and I don't want to sidetrack this. This is a good stream. I don't want to sidetrack off. I mean, he's a veteran. He went airborne. Blah blah blah. That's fine, but he is that guy.
That guy. I gotcha.
Yeah, everybody knows that guy. Yeah,
I see that stone bit. That guy.
yeah. Josh is piping in that guy. Oh yeah. Did anyone ever accuse you of stolen valor? Not
once.
I.
Yeah. Yes. Flying
Really?
home from basic training because you're a slick sleeve of no unit patch, and I was on my airplane, and she later told me she was in E7. I forget what unit she was on, but she was grilling me. And she was asking me all these questions about Army regulation. I have a private straight out basic training. I didn't know the answer, but we got through it. But yeah, that's the only time I ever got that. That's funny. That's why you're not supposed to fly in your uniform back in those days.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, we had to fly in our uniform.
Oh, really?
Way back in the day. Yeah, because my first duty assignment was in Korea, and slick sleeve private, and on the plane, SeaTac, and then Korea.
Okay.
Well, actually, I ended up stuck at Travis Air Force Base for a week because I left Alabama, flew to California, Travis, and my plane left an hour before I got there.
Oh
They
man.
they screwed up my plane tickets, so
It wasn't your fault though. That's what
it wasn't my
matters.
fault. It wasn't my fault. So I hung around Travis Air Force, and I saw an old high school buddy of mine. So I hung around with him for a week, and I just kept checking in, checking in, checking in. They finally got me on a plane, and I got back over there.
There are worse places to be stuck, right?
Yeah, it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool. That's the only time I've ever spent in California, but it was really nice. So I enjoyed it. Who's the most influential person you ever met?
I'd say my adopted dad, but I want to stay in context to the old guard. There's two people I want to say. My platoon sergeant for Honor Guard Company. He ended up becoming the sergeant of the guard, so the platoon sergeant for the Tomb of the Known Soldier. Just to summarize this guy's demeanor of how much he held the standard. There's one day I was on company staff duty, and they had a mission at I can't remember if it was what type of reef it was, but when you have a reef ceremony, you have to be there at like 4:30 in the morning. It's super early just to go through the rehearsals, make sure you go through security, all that stuff. And it's like 12:10, right after midnight, and my platoon sergeant walks out of the press room getting his uniform ready. Hey, sergeant, you're still here? Says, yeah,
Yeah.
making sure my uniform's perfect. But you're on the ceremony tomorrow. Okay. Do you live close? About an hour away. So you're going to get home at like 1:30 in the morning and sleep for like 2 hours and drive back to be ready to go by 4:30. And you could see me like putting together in my face, but he just says, I need to show you guys the standard and I will do the best I absolutely. It's something along those lines. But everything that man did was to the absolute perfection, the highest standard it possibly could be done. Like no room for error. And he held that line by leading by example. And then also my E7 buddy that, we're best friends now. But him just showing me how to be a good leader and taking that time to invest in your individuals and even what he does out here in the civilian, because he actually got out, the time he spends with veterans and not even just veterans, just everyone in general, being what he didn't have is what I try to emulate. And again, him leading by example and putting the extra effort into everything he does.
Yeah, there's way too many do as I say, not as I do people out there nowadays, and it's just I retired in 2011, and probably a good thing because I had been in for a couple days, and
Couple
yeah,
calendars.
well, as you can see in the freaking chat, yeah. So here we go. These guys love me. Plane, not a pterodactyl. Here's another one. Yeah, dick bag. I'm wearing the dick bag hat too. Dick bag patrol.
Something cool about the Wright brothers? They did their first actual test flight on Fort Myer on Whipple Field. Not Whipple Field, Summerall Field. Sorry, Summerall Field.
That's right. And I changed the oil in the engine. So piss off, dick bag.
That's experience.
See, yeah, they just love me so much. Steam engine days. They're so nice. I love my chat. I love my chat.
I appreciate everyone being here. So I'm going to share a story that I don't ever really intend sharing on my channel just because it's one of those, secret things. So there's a while that we were very, very understaffed in the old guard. And we don't just do the funerals for Arlington. We do the majority of them for the National Capital Region. The teams are a lot smaller. There'll be 2 enlisted guys, not enlisted, 1 NCO and 1 enlisted guy, and someone from the Fife and Drum Corps is how it's supposed to be to play the taps. But at this time, we're just super short staffed. So they actually made these trumpets that had a speaker inside of it. So when you're just super understaffed, you send, some other guy, they have a speaker, go out to the funeral. Now, the first time I got assigned to the trumpet player, I can't do that. I don't know how to do it. And then I got to the office, got it. Well, you do your check before you got to the funeral, obviously. Turn on red light. Okay, good. It has battery. This one time, this is probably the most embarrassing moment in my life. I go out there, everyone's expecting to hear taps. I go up. The way you hold it, you tap the button with your pinky, so it looks ceremonial. You're a little ways away. I hit that button, it plays the first note, and then it drowns out and dies. I just had to stand there because I can't mouth it. And then I just had to march away. But it felt so horrible. But a lot of people don't know that sometimes when you don't have the staffing, you have to improvise.
Yeah, I did know that.
Oh, you did?
I knew about the electronic trumpet thing they stick in the end of it.
Yeah.
I've seen it several times, mainly at military funerals and stuff, just because they just don't have anybody to play it, the bugle. So
one thing I want to share about the Old Guard, it puts a lot in perspective for you. So one of the things you do for training is you stand in front of a mirror so you can watch yourself do the movements. But staying in front of a mirror for onwards of 5 hours a day for weeks, like it makes you think about a lot of stuff. And then participating in ceremonies as your job. I've seen funerals where no one showed up, and funerals where there's hundreds of people there. People that are super respectful, people literally playing music, treating it like a barbecue. But, just seeing that contrast and having to hold the line during those just terribly difficult times, like it makes you grow up really fast and puts a lot into perspective for you. It makes you think about a lot of things that I don't think you normally would have to at that age. So it's very challenging.
I lose my shit at the races when they start playing the national anthem and people don't take the hat off, they don't stop. Oh, I lose my shit on them.
Yeah. You want to do the veteran justice and you don't break ceremonial composure because you want to show them that respect. But those times when you're with the family, it's the hardest day of their life and you can't comfort them. You just have to stay stoic, no movement, honor that veteran. Again, that tenacity that you have to display in those situations, and it makes you grow up a lot and put things in perspective.
Yeah, I can imagine. They're getting out of control. They're getting out of control. They're out of control. Hey, listen, we've been going a little bit over an hour. I like to try and keep it at an hour. Gavin, thank you so much for coming up. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, MSG. Thank you for having me, and thank you for.
Oh yeah, it's great because all the myths and it's just great to see. It's great to cover success stories in contrast to the stolen valor shitbags that are just they take such a toll. And I was talking with Josh about this too. After a while, it takes a toll on you where you're looking at hours of video and the guy is so full of shit. And I was going to do a Herb Minshew update, but the guy that had his interview on Library of Congress, the Veterans History thing, his interview's gone. They took it down. I managed to reach out to him. It was great. I haven't even got his records back yet. And they were like, yeah, if he had gotten 2 Navy Crosses, a Silver Star, and all these Purple Hearts, there isn't a Marine out there that wouldn't know his name.
Yeah.
Because he did some heroic shit in Vietnam to get those kind of awards. And hey, just remember, senior specialist.
Thank you. MSG, you're doing the Lord's work, and I'm hoping we can collab on one of these stolen valor shit bags one day together. Because when I did that Jeremy video, it took a lot out of me that month or two I was working on it. You're right.
It
Going
does.
through it with someone would be good.
Takes a lot out of you. We've been dealing with some new people popping up all over the damn place. They all seem to have something in common. They're convicted felons or pending felonies. They, uncharacterized discharges or never shipped. There's just,
Living out some fantasy.
yep, yep. They took playing Army to a whole new level in their adulthood.
That in the reaction video you did of the J video, when you said the only time he's been overseas is looking over his sea monkeys out, that really got me. That comment that got me going.
All right. Well, hey, thank you everybody for tuning in. Of course, you'll be able to watch it once it ends. If you didn't get here at the beginning, but we had a few little technical different, and now it's perfect.
Of course.
Who knows what was going on with the mystical world of the internet, but we got through it, and I really appreciate it. So, with that, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.